I'm experienced now. What's up, guys? Welcome back to 3 Rounds with Daniel Cormier. Last week we had our premiere episode. It was fun. The response was tremendous. And as always, guys, I appreciate you guys and the way that you support me in pretty much everything that I do. So I love you. I love the way that you went to and made me believe in this idea even more than I did when I first started it. Before I get started with today's show, I want to make sure I give a big congratulations to the guy that won the contest last week, Ovid Van Sickle from Florida. That dude's going to UFC 279 next week on me. Flights, fight tickets, hotels, everything. My man Ovid Van Sickle will experience the UFC in a way that not many people have experienced it before. So congratulations, my friend. And to you guys, make sure you look forward to more giveaways, contests, and everything else. I've got a ton of stuff coming on my YouTube channel, all because you guys support me in the way that you do. But now, it's time to get to the fight. Let's go. Round 1. Jake Paul opened as a betting favorite over Anderson Silva. MMA Mania reported that the opening line started with Jake Paul as a minus 180 favorite to 150 positive for Anderson. Guys, within hours, as we expected, the money came pouring in of the former champion, and the line shifted drastically. And now it lists Silva as a favorite over Paul. The betting line, as of this taping, was minus 135 Silva, plus 105 for Jake Paul. Now, what Anderson Silva has done since he started fighting boxing, it's truly been amazing. And that's not to take anything away from Jake Paul. But what Anderson Silva did at his age against the competition that he has fought has outweighed anything that Paul has done. And it all lies in one performance. One performance, and one performance stops everything. The win over Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Not to mention the win over Tito Ortiz, but it's a bit expected. But when you beat a guy like Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., I understand that Chavez Jr. is a bit of a fuck-off, right? I mean, let's call it what it is. Even in his heyday, when he was fighting the best boxers in the world, and HBO would be following Chavez, Chavez moved to the beat of his own drum. He was a little bit different. He was not his father. But this guy spent a lifetime in boxing. This guy has been around the sport his entire life. This guy has fought the best fighters in the world and fought them at times competitively. Anderson Silva beat that dude over the course of an entire boxing match. Remember how much we credited Conor for going down 9 rounds with the great Floyd Mayweather. But the reality is, he still got knocked out. Anderson not only fought this dude who has spent a lifetime in boxing, who is the son of one of the greatest boxers of all time, he actually beat him. Anderson actually beat that dude. So now, when you hear he opens as an underdog to Jake Paul, come on, man, you gotta be kidding me. This is Anderson Silva we're talking about. But let's talk about Jake Paul. Jake Paul's 5-0 in his professional career. He's beaten former UFC fighters Ben Askren and Tyron Woodley twice. He also beat up on poor Nate Robinson. I mean, still to this day, what he did to Nate Robinson was some funny ass shit. This dude knocked Nate ass out bad. He knocked my boy Ben Askren out bad too. I ain't gonna even lie. But Jake Paul, love him or hate him, is a pay-per-view commodity because in those 5 fights, he has sold over 2 million pay-per-views. That's nothing to frown at. As a guy that myself has headlined pay-per-views, have carried the responsibility of an event and making that event successful, it's not easy to do to sell 2 million pay-per-views. My biggest pay-per-views were with John Jones and with Brock Lesnar on the card. So for this kid to sell an average of 400,000 pay-per-views every time he fights, it's amazing. But we're not talking about just some random dude in Jake Paul because he's got money. They always say, like, I watched a video once where they were talking about head starts. You got 2 parents in the house, you got this, you got this. Jake Paul has that head start because he's got money. Most young boxers don't have the ability to hire high-level trainers. Jake Paul does, though. Most young fighters, they go to the local trainer in their area, start learning the box, and then they turn pro, and then they're fed cannon fodder early in the career. Only guys that get the level of training early that he has are Olympians. We've seen the Olympians do that over and over again, and then they excel. Jake Paul's got some ability. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Jake Paul can't fight, but Jake Paul now has a real fight. This is a guy in Anderson Silva that at one point we thought about, he was about to fight Roy Jones Jr. That's how real he is in the sport of boxing. Dana White said that while he's tired of addressing Jake Paul, this is a real one. Because Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva shows that Jake Paul is taking this fight career seriously. But the reality of the situation is it's very dangerous for him. Because I really can't imagine that he gets past Anderson Silva. You don't just outstrike Anderson Silva. You don't just outbox Anderson Silva, regardless of his age. This is a real fight. This is a tough fight as I get to the 10-second mark. And when I got to make my prediction, I'm taking the former champ Anderson Silva. Let's go. As we get into round two, we got to go back to last week. Last week, Jorge Masvidal came at me, talked about my clothing, talked about me hating on him and everything else. I kind of responded in a way that was almost like I threw it on Malky, right? Malky texted me in my direct messages and goes, nah, man, wasn't me. Dude was like, it wasn't me, but people do that to me. I can handle this. He goes, most people do deflect. I wanted to take a little time to process everything before I answer them because it's easy to trade insults, but I respect George. I actually like George. So I'm not really here to like sling mud at him and talk trash about him and his career because ultimately, at the end of the day, I do appreciate what he did and how he has made himself relevant in a world where it's very difficult to make yourself relevant when you've been that long in the career. A lot of things went in his favor in order to get him to where he is today, but what he's done has been tremendous. It really has, and I respect that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give him a bit of a path to the title shot, that one that he so desperately desires. I was on my show with Ryan Clark, DC and RC, and he once told me when I was going through my stuff with Sugar Sean O'Malley that at times fighters mistake popularity for success. It's not true. That's not true, especially in this instance right now, because being popular will not get Jorge Masvidal a title shot. Because even though you're popular, it does not outwork the work it does not outweigh the work that you put on paper. It doesn't. You can be popular. People can love you. It's not 2019 anymore, though. The last 3 times we have seen him fight, he's been unsuccessful. So the popularity is great as a starting point, but ultimately, everything comes and is rooted in the work. So how does Jorge Masvidal get to a title fight? 1, you got to fight Gilbert Burns right now. You got to accept that fight. I don't know if you've been offered the fight. I don't know if the legal issues are keeping you from taking the fight, but Gilbert Burns is out there saying that the fight's been offered. He's out there saying publicly that it's just on you now. And I know Jorge Masvidal is a street dude from Miami and does not run from a fight. But if you want that title fight, you got to fight Durinho right now. And you got to win. But you also got to do one more thing. You got to fight him before the Usman-Edwards rematch is announced, the trilogy. You got to be going in the right direction by the time that fight gets announced so that if given the opportunity, you can capitalize on the chance just like you did in the first title fight. What a lot of us forget in regards to Jorge Masvidal is like, he wasn't supposed to fight Kamaru Usman in Abu Dhabi the first time. He took that fight on 6 days' notice. Dude jumped on a plane, stopped in Italy, got some pizza. Rest is history. And then because he had a good first round, he was granted a rematch. But it all came down to chance. But chance doesn't happen. Chance does not happen if you aren't going in the right direction. Chance doesn't happen if you are on a 3-fight losing streak. Doesn't come to chance because they look to all the other guys. Somebody gets hurt in that trilogy fight, especially if Khamzat Chimaev gets through Nate Diaz, they'll look to Chimaev. Or they'll look to someone else. They'll look to other guys. Masvidal's 37 years old. So the timing has to be very important because there's a way, but I believe that at this time it would take a little bit of luck. And the first step is to get a fight. Putting another win streak together like he had in 2009 is going to be tough. But if you win one, then at least you put your name in the hat. Darren Till is saying it outweighs the trilogy fight. Maybe it does. But again, it needs to have some merit. So first step is fight Gilbert Burns. And then hope for a little bit of luck. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you cannot erase the memory of the last time we have seen him in there. We saw him get knocked out by Kamaru Usman, and we saw Colby Covington dominate him. He's got to win a fight. He's got to get going right now. And then you get a chance, Jorge Masvidal. That's my advice to you. Good luck. All right, it's time for round 3. The tough round. This is the toughest round, right? You're a little tired, you're fatigued, but you got to get through that third round. And in my third round, I'm going to my boy, Ariel Helwani. I know I don't talk about him much since him and I stopped doing the show, but he did something that warrants us talking about. Ariel Helwani gets between Danny Sabatello and Rafion Stotts. Guys, this week on the MMA Hour, the guys got after each other. And honestly, I kind of expected Helwani to react like he did when Dahlia used to kick his ass back in grade school. But he actually stood up and he stopped the fight. He actually stood up and stopped the fight. Sabatello tried to pull a McGregor. He tried to pull the belt off of the desk in front of Stotts. This all started, though, because Ariel instigates. His ass instigates, and it finally got the best of him. Finally got his ass. Because now he finds himself in the middle of these dudes trying to get after each other. And honestly, while he was able to stop the fight, his voice showed me how afraid he was. His ass was scared. But nobody went to help him. I kind of expected, the producers and everybody to run to my boy's defense, but he didn't. And he stood up and goes, guys, if this is gonna work, you gotta calm down. I mean, this dude hey, let me tell you something. He surprised me. Because like he told me, Dahlia used to bully him in school. Would go to Jewish dinners and everything and just bully this dude with a frown on her face. And it would scare him. Now, what they did with Ariel wasn't new. This is fight promotion at its finest. Now, I'm starting to sweat up in here, guys. This is crazy. We got to turn the air off in order to do this. But in fight promotion, you get the two athletes, you put them together. There have been moments where athletes come face to face, and fear is what happens to the person that is tasked with keeping the guys apart. Look at this right here. Look at the face of Dave Schauler when he had to be between me and John Jones. Then you had the great Howard Cosell, who actually sat between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. Cosell didn't even get up. Cosell just let these dudes act a ass by themselves. Because guess what? Cosell was so great, his greatness spoke for itself that he didn't even need to stand. He didn't need to take part in the nonsense. He was above it. But dare I say, like my boy Helwani used to always tell me, the reaction was surprising. I know that he rides his Peloton and he does his Helwani boxing. So I get that the guy's trained. My boy's training. But you got to understand that not everyone can handle a sit down in that way. Because look at me. I had Aljamain Sterling and Henry Cejudo in Henry's house, and I dealt with no issues. But I mean, look at me. Who's testing D.C. in that situation? Joe Rogan sat between me and John Jones. No issues, because you know Joe Rogan, the karate. You got to have some skills for you to put yourself in that situation. But like my boy said, he goes, I ain't no bitch. That's what he told me. When I spoke to Helwani, he said, I ain't no bitch. And then proceeded to call a couple other dudes that had sat in that situation bitches. Helwani is a dog, and he don't give a damn about nobody. It is what it is. Since going on the hill, my boy Ariel Helwani has not made many friends. But he's still near and dear to me. I don't speak much about him today, but that's my guy. When you've done a lot for a person's career, it's hard to just ignore them. So here's my message to my good friend Ariel Helwani. Sit downs are fun, but you better be ready for the smoke if you're going to handle them. Because you did a good job, but I really do kind of attribute your success in stopping the fight because you're dealing with a couple bantamweights, I think. Maybe a featherweight. I don't even know what weight class these guys fight. But what I do know, that it was probably the most promotion Bellator has gotten in a really long time. So I'm sure Scott Coker ain't mad about it as I get to the 10-second timer. Ariel Helwani, great job, my friend. Miss you, buddy. See you soon. Now for my final word. Fighters and fighters in the media. That's my thought. So the way that athletes attack guys that now work in the media have to ask themselves one question. Are you attacking or talking to Daniel Cormier, the media personality, Michael Bisping, the media personality, or the peer? Because the reality is this. The peer is what mattered to me. I never allowed for something someone in the media said to dictate and really control my actions. Because ultimately it didn't really matter to me. But what did matter was the respect and the acknowledgement of my peers. So I asked these guys, when they come at me in the way that they do, are you talking to me as the peer? Or are you talking to me as the media personality? Because there's a big difference. When you talk to me as the peer, you got to deal with the peer. You got to deal with Daniel Cormier, the fighter. I understand that Daniel Cormier, the media guy, is cuddly and personal, and he can hug you, he can squeeze him, right? He feels like a big squishy person. But underneath all that is the bear. Still the UFC champion, the Strikeforce champion, and all the things that I did over the course of my career. So I ask you once again, when you talk to Michael Bisping, when you talk to Daniel Cormier, those retired fighters, are you addressing the peer? Are you addressing the media guy? Because as a media guy, I am paid to do this job. We don't have to agree on the things that I say, but ultimately I got to eat that, right? Because my words do sting at times, but I never say anything just to hurt anyone. I'm saying things to try and speak about topics that I am tasked with speaking about. But if you're talking to Daniel Cormier, the fighter, now it's different because now we have conversations amongst each other. Jorge Masvidal and I have been in the same circle, in the same organizations all the way back to Strikeforce, and I respect them immensely. But I ask all these guys, once again, who are you talking to? Because I would appreciate knowing, do I stay in hibernation or does that big nasty bear come back to play? I guess I'll find out soon enough. Until then, guys, like, subscribe, keep watching. I love each and every one of you. Thanks for the support. Until next time, peace.